Ajnanatamrandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshuran Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. So thank you for attending today. Today's class has a two-part aspect to it. The first part is looking into the crisis that the Gaudiya Sampradaya is facing in terms of unauthorized translations of the Gaudiya literature. What I mean by unauthorized translations is translations that are filled with mistakes and hence misrepresenting the philosophy of Gaudiya Vaishnavism, that translations that are taken by their readers to be authoritative, so misrepresenting the philosophy to the greater body of devotees that are reading these books, and ultimately doing a disservice to Jiva Goswami in particular, because the let's say the most severe problem comes in the translation of the Sandarbhas. So there's a tremendous misrepresentation of the work of Jiva Goswami, and the consequence of this is that the Sandarbhas, or the philosophy of Gaudiya Vaishnavism, cannot be taken seriously, to have any sort of impact in the world. So this kind of ties in with the two other classes that I gave on universalism in Jiva Goswami, although this is it's kind of indirectly related to the topic, but it is significant in the sense that the universal themes in Jiva Goswami can only really come to light if his works are translated at a very high standard and in language that is appropriate to modern disciplines of knowledge. So by the very poor standard of translations that are being put out to now, this is an impossibility. Rather, any scholars that look into the work will simply dismiss it as completely insignificant, as not worthy of the time to look into it. So this is one part of the discussion. And the other part is then, okay, so what about the translations that are being done by the Jiva Institute? What is the basis of the claim to there being valid or authoritative translations? So we're going to look into the inside picture of how the translations have been done in the Jiva Institute. And by this twofold analysis, it should become more than apparent of what the standard of translation is meant to be. So, first of all, the question may be raised by those that are not, like students of Satyanarayan Baba. In other words, if this discussion is going out to a wider audience, the question is valid to be raised, that how are you claiming, how are you, Navadvipa Dasa, claiming that there are unauthorized translations or translations riddled with mistakes? Why should we take your word for it? Who are you anyway? So this is a valid question. And in fact, there's no way that I can really answer this question without analyzing some pieces of translated text and showing just how mistaken they are. So we're going to go into this, but kind of as a preface to the discussion, I wanted to say that let's say the problem, the crisis, the heart or the core of the crisis is that in the last 150 years or so, since there was let's say a development in the Gaudiya Sampradaya towards making the teachings of Gaudiya Vaishnavism available in the world. Okay, everybody knows the story, since beginning with Bhaktivinoda Thakur and so on, that beginning from this time, there were certain ideas that more than likely, because there was not the possibility of undergoing a systematic study of the Sandarbhas. This is not at all anything surprising, because first of all, the first published edition of the Sandarbhas, as far as we know, were done by a Gaudiya Vaishnava by the name of Pran Gopal, who did the first translation of the Sandarbhas into Bengali. And this was late 1800s. So prior to that time, to even come in contact with the Sandarbhas in any form would have been very, very difficult. In fact, if you read the biography of Bhaktivinoda Thakur, the Hindu encounter with modernity, it's very clear that until his 40s, he didn't even come in contact with Chaitanya Charitamrita, which is a classic of Bengali literature. So Sandarbhas would have been very difficult to come in contact with. And all these problems are essentially rooted in, let's say, they could have been cleared in the very beginning with a thorough study of the Sandarbhas. Now, since that time, certain ideas have been passed down, and those ideas have become so firmly fixed in let's say, the majority of Gaudiya Vaishnavas that have, let's say, come out of this development, that now that the Sandarbhas are starting to become available, let's say it is almost impossible for people to objectively look at Jiva Goswami's discussion on many of these points and to actually consider them in an objective light. So I wanted to share with you a discussion. This is just a brief point that is made on the topic of hermeneutics. Now, hermeneutics is the study of interpretation, the theory and methodology of interpretation, the attempt to theorize the conditions under which interpretation is possible. So it involves the basic nature, scope, and validity, as well as the place within and implications for human existence. This is in the sort of broader modern discussion of hermeneutics. So there is a point made here. There's a certain critique that is made by a prominent hermeneutics, but the points that are made very much address the crisis that we are facing in terms of how to interpret scripture, how to interpret the Sandarbhas of Jiva Goswami. So I'll read to you now. Habermas raises the objection that philosophical hermeneutics, with its adherence to the authority of tradition, leaves no room for the critique of ideologies entrenched in the historically transmitted prejudices on which our experience of truth relies. It goes on here, but I wanted to emphasize what is being said here, that there's been a certain transmission of ideas, a historical transmission of ideas, not dating from Jiva Goswami, not dating from the Sandarbhas, dating from the time of Bhaktivinoda Thakur. So a transmission, historic, which involves, in this case, historically transmitted prejudices, certain preconceived ideas that are in retrospect, through an objective study of Sandarbhas, are found not to be consistent with certain ideas. Moreover, I'm going to go on here, moreover, as we might accordingly worry, what Gadamer describes as the hermeneutical experience of truth might not be an experience of truth at all, but rather a distorted communication that is complicit in ideology, since the so-called truth results from a conversation that might not be open, but oriented by prejudices that reinforce relations of dominance. So essentially this is what is going on, that, and I'm not, though I'm speaking of Bhaktivinoda Thakur, I'm not laying any blame on him. I'm simply stating the fact that if he did not have the opportunity to study the Sandarbhas systematically, then it would not be surprising if there would be certain ideas that may not be consistent with the Sandarbhas of Jiva Goswami. Now, I'm not saying this is across the board. I'm saying that there are certain specific ideas, but then these ideas became propagated as the truth, and this is a conversation that is not open to discussion. It's not open to objective analysis. And it is oriented by prejudices that reinforce relations of dominance. So this is essentially what is going on at present, and it is not allowing the Sandarbhas to be examined objectively, because some preconceived prejudices are being held to, and because relations of dominance are at stake in maintaining certain prejudices. Now, as regards the work of translation, especially in a work like the Sandarbhas, and you have to understand, the Sandarbhas represent the metaphysics of the school of Gaudiya Vaishnavism. All of the important siddhantas regarding the Swarupa Bhagavan, the Swarupa Prakriti, the Swarupa of the Jiv, all the interrelations between them, the Swarupa Bhakti, all of these things are discussed in detail in the Sandarbhas. Now, because the Sandarbhas are rooted in a vast context, they're rooted in the context of the complete Sadharshan, meaning Nyaya, Vedanta, Karma Mimamsa, Yoga, Sankhya, Vaisheshika, in the Rasa Shastras, goes without saying, linguistic theory, in Indian linguistic theory. It's rooted in all of these things. It is so the text is so difficult that without a very extensive background in all these disciplines, you can't follow what Jiva Goswami is talking about. You're bound to misunderstand. And the examples, we're coming up to this in a moment, the examples that we're going to examine, which are from Priti Sandarbha, and that concern the topic of rasa. It is clear that the translator has no background in the Rasa Shastras. The mistakes that are made are so outrageous. It's almost unbelievable. So anyway, let's get into looking at some of these problems. What really strikes me as odd is that the person undertaking the translation, that never occurred to them that the text is beyond them. It's really hard to understand. The preparation necessary, in this case, these works are being done by Satyanarayan Baba, under his guardianship, and by his direct involvement in the translation work. He studied the Sandarbhas in their completion from Haridas Shastri Maharaj. Actually, the Sandarbhas have been passed down in this line from teacher to student up to present times, as they were received directly by Satyanarayan Baba. And in addition, for at least the last 35 years, Satyanarayan has been involved in a continuous study of all of the darshans of Indian philosophy from traditional teachers, and continues to do so at present. So, and this is something extremely rare. There's hardly anyone that undertakes this kind of study nowadays. So he has undertaken a vast preparation to undertake this work. And let's say this is being done, there's a whole team involved, but in my own case, just to give you some background, I've been involved in the field of translation for 32 years now. And in the course of that, I've also done quite extensive study in the darshans, not nearly to the same extent as Satyanarayan, but let's say nonetheless quite a extensive overview of all the darshans. But in a way, more significantly, is that I've, for the last 25 years, undertaken a extensive study in world religion, mysticism, transpersonal psychology, many disciplines, to, let's say, bring a standard of language to the work that can bring these teachings out in appropriate language for a modern audience and for modern systems of knowledge. So this cooperation is a highly effective cooperation. Let's say we've both undergone tremendous preparation for this work. And one last point I wanted to get into just before we get into the specifics of this translation. Going back to this point that I read, this critique that was made by this German philosopher Habermas, that in the beginning of my translation career, when I was still in ISKCON, actually I hadn't even really started my career of translation at that point. I was studying language and I started to translate portions of Bhakti-rasamrita Sindhu, more from my own study. But because I showed, let's say, a certain skill even in the very beginning, there was a prominent leader in ISKCON that I had a lot of respect for at the time. And he was, because he was concerned about these issues that I'm bringing up now, but he was concerned to preserve the historically transmitted prejudices. So he was already, in a way, prejudicing my mind toward the views that were being propagated in ISKCON and Gaudiya Math. And he was saying to me, now that you're embarking in this career, please be very attentive to see if you can find whatever evidence you can find to support the views being presented in ISKCON and Gaudiya Math. Before I even started, I was already being prejudiced toward a particular point of view. In case anyone may raise the argument that, oh, but you got influenced by, somewhere along the line, by the Babajis. I got prejudiced in the very beginning against the so-called Babaji view. But in the course of my development and progression, in the translation field, I couldn't find anything. I couldn't find any evidence to support the prejudices that I was geared to in the beginning. In fact, whatever I found was the exact opposite. So now let's get into some of the specifics. And it's very bewildering for the modern community of Gaudiya Vaishnavas, because first of all, somehow in the world community of Gaudiya Vaishnavism, many people take up this work of translation without the type of preparation that we have undergone. It seems to be like a fashion or something. And moreover, some of the people that are taking up this translation work, they may be sannyasis and gurus. So the average devotee will take them as authority. Their translations must be good, right? Because they're a sannyasi and they're a guru. And these other people, their translations must be bad, because they're influenced by Babajis. So, it's very confusing. What is the standard to say what is a good translation and what is not. So we're going to look at a piece of translated text, a few pieces of translated text. This is from Priti Sandarbha, and this is the beginning of the discussion of Rasa theory. And so this is actually from Anuchhed 110 of Priti Sandarbha. And just to give you some context, I'm going to read a brief passage which this is from Babaji's commentary on Anuchhed 110, and there's two paragraphs. These two paragraphs sum up very concisely the whole development from Anuchhed 84 up to the beginning of Anuchhed 110, summarizing the context, the flow of ideas that are leading up now to Jiva Goswami's presentation or examination of Priti as Rasa. So the following brief summary of the overriding topic begun in Anuchhed 84 is important to consider as the basis of the present discussion. In Anuchhed 84, 1-2, Jiva Goswami delineated the 8 graded stages of Priti, beginning from Prem and culminating in Mahabhav. Correspondingly, in the same Anuchhed, he discussed the different abhimans, you can say the transcendental sense of self, with which the liberated devotees are endowed in response to the disclosure to them of a specific essential nature of Bhagavan, Svabhav Vishesh. So in this discussion, Bhagavan discloses a particular nature, out of his unlimited nature and out of his unlimited swabhavs. He discloses a particular swabhav, and in correspondence to that, the devotee develops a corresponding abhiman, a corresponding sense of self that establishes the relation between them. So in Vatala Ras, Krishna discloses himself as Balagopal, as a child in need of the protection and love of his parents. So when he discloses that particular swabhav, to Ananda and Yashoda, then the abhiman, the sense of self, arises in them as the parents and guardians of Krishna, who is in need of their protection. This is what is being discussed here. In this regard, he showed the developmental unfolding of the integrated self-concept, the abhiman, from its most rudimentary form in the Jnani Bhaktas to its radically complete form in Krishna's amorous lovers, Lakantas. Then, in Anuchhed 84-91, he illustrated each of Priti's above-mentioned 8 stages, so giving examples of each. In Anuchhed 92, to link the gradation of Priti to that of the devotee's abhiman, he specified the extent of Priti's manifestation in the different categories of liberated devotees, from the Jnani Bhaktas to the Preyasis. So now he's linking these 8 stages of Prem to the different types of devotees, from Jnanis, to the Gopis ultimately. connected with this whole topic of the unfolding of the abhiman in relation to the swabhav that is disclosed. This is all preparation for this topic. In the context of the same discussion in Anucheds 93 to 96, Jiva Goswami emphasized the importance of Bhagavan's own abhiman. And this is, from the point of view of, let's say, radical Vedanta, Bhagavan has an abhiman. Anyway, there's a whole discussion of this, but so Jiva Goswami emphasized the importance of Bhagavan's own abhiman in regard to the parikars and the critical role played by mamata, the sense of minus, and abhiman in the intensification of priti. Then, to bring a sense of completion to the entire discussion, in Anucheds 97 to 109, he explained the gradation of bhavs in the parikars from the dasya bhaktas up to the amorous lovers, kantas. Among the latter, the Vrajadevis are shown to be supreme, and among them, Radha is the foremost. A key factor introduced in Anuched 97 and serving as the basis of discussion throughout this section is the analysis of the two aspects of Bhagavan's intrinsic nature, namely Aishvarya and Madhurya. In the Parikars, experience of either, it is the Parikar's experience of either of these two features or some combination of both that determines the qualitative nature and magnitude of their priti. This entire discussion from Anuched 84 to 109 lays the groundwork for the topic that is now introduced in this Anuched, namely the experience of priti as rasa, or aesthetic delight. Okay, I've read this so that you have a clear idea of the topics that we're going to look into now, and the thoroughness of Jiva Goswami's analysis. For our understanding of rasa, all these details are essential. And everything that comes prior to this, in other words, all of the discussion in the first four Sandarbhas and also Bhakti Sandarbha lays the groundwork for all of this discussion. So those that raise the argument that all of this, metaphysical knowledge, it's not important. Let's just go straight to the discussion of rasa. Okay, let's look at some of the problems now. So in the second part of this class, we're going to discuss how the topics have been divided according to theme in our presentation of the Sandarbhas, and the titles and so on, which are vital to help the devotees understand the topics being discussed. So this overriding title for Anuched 110 is Priti is Rasa. And this is broken down into smaller subsections, which make it easier to grasp the points that are being discussed. And each subsection is commented on by Satyanarayan. And the first part of this discussion, again, this ties into the universalism that Jiva Goswami doesn't just straight out start discussing rasa theory in bhakti. because there's already an established tradition, an established parampara of rasa theory, going back to around the year 500 or so, beginning with Bharat Muni. It actually dates back before that, because even Bharat Muni himself refers to earlier aestheticians, but let's say it was codified and developed by Bharat Muni, and then there are lines, there are 4 prominent lines of parampara, of discussion of rasa theory stemming from Bharat Muni, with important distinctions between them and a certain line of development. And both Jiva Goswami's and Rupa Goswami's presentation of rasa, Jiva Goswami's in Priti Sandarbha, Rupa Goswami's in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu and Ujjwal Nilmani, is based on this whole foundation. They refer to these authorities. To establish Priti as rasa in universal terms, we first have to, Jiva Goswami felt the need to first go into the discussion, elaboration of the traditional view of rasa theory. Only by understanding that can we then establish Priti as rasa. Because otherwise there are the objections can be raised and have been raised. You know, so there's a need, a great need, to first discuss it on these grounds. And this is what he's doing. So the first subsection here is called Validation of Bhagavad Priti as the Sthayi Bhav of Rasa. Okay, this is the first. Without the Sthayi Bhav, there's no Rasa. So this is the first step. So let's read at what this translator has said about the opening statement in this Anucheda. The different levels, maybe I should read Jiva Goswami's first. In this manner, bearing in mind what we just read, this whole summary leading up to this point, in this manner, among all the various types of mellifluousness, madhuri, implicit in Bhagavad Priti, of the nature previously described, that of Sri Radha's Priti is priorly ascended, adhirud, to a level of delectability beyond all others. Now, let me just refer here to a very relevant comment of Pran Gopal on this first statement. Pran Gopal takes this qualifying clause to mean, let me just read this statement of Jiva again here. Among all the various types of mellifluousness, among all the various types of madhuri, implicit in Bhagavad Priti, of the nature previously described. What does the statement mean? Pran Gopal takes this qualifying clause to mean among the various gradations of the madhuri implicit in the parikar's priti. This is the whole discussion that we've just gone through, each of which is determined according to the degree of the particular parikar's immediate experience, anubhav, of Bhagavan's madhurya. By connecting this to the main clause, the sense is that Radha's anubhav of Bhagavan's madhurya exceeds that of all other parikars, and thus the madhuri implicit in her priti is naturally ascended, adhiruda, to a level beyond all others. Okay, I'll read the next sentence also. Up to this point in this treatise, Priti Sandarbha, in the course of establishing the supremacy of Radha's Priti, the gradation, Taratamya, in the various categories of love, Priti Jati, for Krishna has been demonstrated. Basically, this statement, he's summarizing briefly the last Anucheds from Anuched 84 up to 109. Okay, let's see how this has been translated now. The different levels of gopis. Somehow, he's not talking about gopis here. Somehow he must have taken the word Madhuri as gopis. The different levels of gopis who love the Supreme Lord in the mood of sweetness, levels that culminate in the love felt by Sri Radha, who has no equal or superior, will be described in this Anuched. This Anuched has nothing to do with that. This statement of Jiva Goswami is saying, has been demonstrated. First of all, there's a mistranslation here. If we take out the middle part, the sentence becomes, the different levels of gopis who love the Supreme Lord in the mood of sweetness will be described in this Anuched. Let me read again so you understand how wrong this is. In this manner, among all the various types of mellifluousness, Madhuri, implicit in Bhagavad Priti, of the nature previously described, that of Sri Radha's Priti is priorly ascended to a level of delectability beyond all others. Okay, so let's go on now. This Bhagavad Priti, I'm reading Jiva Goswami here. This Bhagavad Priti, like the rati described by the recognized authorities on secular aesthetics, Lokik Kavya Vid, is itself designated as the permanent foundational affect of love, the Sthayi Bhav, which attains the state of aesthetic relish, Rasa, through the conjunction of its causes, karanas, effects, karyas, and auxiliaries, sahayas. The causes, effects, and auxiliaries are technically specified as vibhavs, anubhavs, and vyabhichari bhavs, respectively. So, first of all, in the secular aesthetics, the Sthayi Bhav of Rasa is rati. So, Jiva Goswami is now making this correspondence. Basically, he's saying that just as rati is established as the Sthayi Bhav in the realm of secular aesthetics, so also Bhagavad Priti is established as the Sthayi Bhav in the realm of transcendental aesthetics. And this Sthayi Bhav attains to the state of rasa through the conjunction of its causes, effects, and auxiliaries, which in the technical language of rasa means the vibhavs, anubhavs, and vyabhichari bhavs. So, this has been translated as follows. Considering its causes and effects, scholars learned in ordinary material poetry call this kind of love Sthayi Bhav. Now, the next sentence, you'll understand how wrong this is. The causes of sthayi bhav are vibhav, anubhav, and vyabhichari bhav. What? I'll read again what Jiva Goswami is saying. Bhagavad Priti as the sthayi bhav attains to the state of rasa through the conjunction of its causes, effects, and auxiliaries. The causes of sthayi bhav are vibhav, anubhav, and vyabhichari bhav. This is so wrong. Now, in Jiva Goswami's next statement, he's going to take apart these two components. What is the meaning of sthayi, and what is the meaning of bhav? Again, with the intent to establish Bhagavad Priti as the sthayi bhav of rasa. So in this regard, Bhagavad Priti is determined as a fundamental affect, bhav, due to its being of the essential constitution of love, priti rupatvat. So this is the first part. And it is determined as permanent, sthayi, because it meets the criteria of constancy specified in the authoritative literature dealing with aesthetic experience, rasa. So, I don't know, this is completely missed. He's just saying here, these bhavs are all part of priti. The first statement, which is about bhav, again, Bhagavad Priti is determined as a fundamental affect, bhav, due to its being of the essential constitution of love. It's saying here, these bhavs are all part of priti. It's not explaining the point at all. Then, the second part, which is establishing that it is permanent because it meets the criteria of constancy specified in the authoritative literature, he says here instead, sthayi bhav is described in these words of the Rasa Shastra. Okay, and now we quote the verse, which is quoted simply to prove that it meets the criteria of constancy. That fundamental affect, meaning bhav, which is not interrupted either by compatible or incompatible emotions, but rather assimilates them into itself, is called the permanent foundational affect of love, sthayi bhav, analogous to the ocean. He translates this as, it's not as terrible as some of the other ones, but he says here, ecstatic love that is not diminished by favorable or unfavorable situations is called sthayi bhav, which is love deep like an ocean. So, technically speaking, it's not just any favorable or unfavorable situation that we're talking about here. It is not interrupted either by compatible or incompatible bhavs. And this other part is completely left out, but rather assimilates both the compatible and incompatible emotions into itself. This is left out. entirely of the translation. I'm just wondering, I mean, I have so much material here. I could go on with this probably for at least another half hour. I do want to get on to the second part of the discussion, so I'm wondering, you know, time-wise, Malati, maybe you...
Yeah, I think maybe we should go on because 1.5 hours, it should be within 1.5 hours if possible.
Okay.
Or if you have one more... Maybe.
Okay, let me see if I can pick out one more.
Very fascinating. Very, very shocking.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Okay, so the next subsection we have entitled Countering the Criticism that Bhakti Cannot Be a Rasa. So I'll first read you Jiva Goswami. The view held by the secular aestheticians, the Prakrit Rasikas, that Bhakti is denied as a rasa because it lacks the essential criteria, the samagri, necessary for the enablement of rasa, is, however, applicable only to devotion for the devas, who are phenomenal beings, prakrit. Okay, so he translates this as follows. Because they, who are they? We'll find out. Because they do not have the ingredients of the true rasas, the poets who relish the material rasas do not desire to taste the rasas of devotional service. He comes to be saying, because they, in other words, the poets, the Prakrit Rasikas, because these poets do not have the ingredients of the true rasas. These poets who relish the material rasas do not desire to taste the rasas of devotional service. Let me read again Jiva Goswami's point here. The view held by the secular aestheticians that bhakti is denied as a rasa because it lacks the essential criteria necessary for the enablement of rasa is, however, applicable only to devotion for the devas who are phenomenal beings. The person clearly has no preparation, has no background in rasa theory, and is just purely speculating. Okay, and just one last point before I go on. Okay, now this is the beginning of the discussion of Rasa-Bhas, which in Jiva Goswami has three divisions actually. There's Rasa-bhas, Ras-ullas, and Ras-abhas-ullas. It would take a while to elaborate all these, what all of these things mean, but let me just read Jiva Goswami's statement here and then the translation that has been given.
Which Anuched?
This is Anuched 174. Such being the case, in individuals related to Sri Krishna, as well as in poetic works so related, the obstruction or suspension, badhyamana, in the relishing of rasa, resulting from the admixture, sangati, of other inappropriate aesthetic sentiments, ayogya rasas, is specified as the occlusion of rasa, abhasatvam. This is a technical term, it's explained in detail, but basically this is the first type of rasa-bhas. So this is Jiva Goswami's basic definition of rasa-bhas, that when there is a obstruction or suspension in the relishing of rasa because of the admixture of an inappropriate, for example, in Ujjvala Ras, then suddenly there's the introduction of Vatsalya. Because Vatsalya is incompatible with Ujjvala Ras. So by the introduction of an ayogya, an inappropriate, meaning inappropriate to the sthayi bhav of Ujjvala, then it creates this suspension or this rasa-bhas. In effect, occlusion, just to give you a quick idea, the word occlusion means obstruction, concealment, shutting down, or the relation between surfaces when in contact. Okay, so now he goes on here and says, you're going to define the second type. But wherever the admixture of an inappropriate sentiment leads to the enhancement, utkarsh, of an appropriate foundational affect, a yogisthayi bhav, by virtue of the exceptional artistry of its presentation, it is thus specifically known as the exaltation of aesthetic relish, ras ullas. On the other hand, the enhancement of an inappropriate foundational affect by any other emotive state results only in the exaltation of a semblance of the aesthetic experience. Okay, this is getting a little technical here if you're not familiar with the topic, but let's see how poorly this has been rendered. In this way, in people and poems that have a relationship with Lord Krishna, the taste of rasa-bhas, incompatible rasas, should be avoided. Of course it should be avoided, but, this is not even stated by Jiva Goswami. When the rasas are compatible, that is good. That is glorious. In certain special cases, rasa-bhas is also good and glorious. What can be said, about these sort of translations? And the person in this case is translated all of the Sandarbhas, is putting out translations like in North America. They had these novels that would come out in supermarkets, like they would come out once a week. Some romance novels. So these works, these important works, Harlequin romance were the name of these romance novels. these works of the Goswamis are being put out like Harlequin romances, without any preparation, without any, validity, full of mistakes. So I had prepared an analysis of both Paramatma Sandarbha and Krishna Sandarbha, but since we're short on time, I'm going to limit the presentation to the Krishna Sandarbha. And even in this particular group, it became apparent to me, and in having discussions with the devotees, that most of you, or almost all of you, were unaware of how Satyanarayan and I are actually doing this work. How the Sandarbhas have been divided, how titles have been assigned. Let's say there was a certain assumption that this is how it was already done by Jiva Goswami. And that is not at all the case. Now, to give you an idea, I don't know if perhaps the camera can see this, or I could bring the book up.
Let's see if I zoom in. Oh no, actually, it's already zoomed in. I cannot.
So let me just come down to show you graphically. This is one particular edition of the Sandarbhas that is put out by the Yadavpur University Press, and they've only given, it's not a translation, it's only the original Sanskrit text, and this would give you an idea of what Jiva Goswami's original writing must have looked like, undivided and so on. So, as you can see here, as we flip through pages, it's just a continuous flow of Sanskrit text.
Without any enumeration.
With, eventually, like some of these Anucheds are quite long, but you can see here, okay, there's the end of Anuched 3. Now we start Anuched 4. Okay, so it just continues like this throughout. Okay, we're up to Anuched 9 here. You see, there's no other division. It's only divided by Anucheds. There's no specification of themes. There's no titles. So, and let's say whatever translations have been done, beginning with Pran Gopal's first translation in Bengali, and other translations that followed after that, they basically followed Jiva Goswami's system. There was no other breakdown, into themes. So, someone could validly question, so why is it that in your book, it's all been divided into themes? What's the validity for this presentation? So this is what we're going to look into now, and I should maybe come back down again to.
Should I hold it in the camera?
There's a couple of things I wanted to show here. Let me see here. I thought I had written something down. Yeah, okay. So at the back of each volume, we've given this the name of the particular Sandarbha and at a glance. This is something that the readers are recommended to consult regularly as a navigational tool to help you understand where you are in the text. And so the whole Sandarbha is broken down. In this case, in Krishna Sandarbha, you see we have first the letters in Roman numerals. So in this case, there are two. So this tells you right away that according to this breakdown, there are two major divisions in the book. Now, each of these obviously have subdivisions. Okay, so the next level, here we would have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 subdivisions. And out of those 6 subdivisions, the fourth one has 3 further subdivisions. Okay, in the second major division would have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 subdivisions. And out of these, the fifth one would have 2 further subdivisions, and the last one would also have 2 further subdivisions. Okay, so now in coordination with this is just the kind of stripped down overview, so you can really get a picture of what's going on in this text at a glance. But this is in perfect correspondence with the table of contents. Okay. Okay, so you can see here you have the same, actually it's a little bit easier if I do it myself because I'm flipping back and forth. So again, you'll see you'll have the 2 major divisions. And once again, you'll have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. No, there should be 6. Maybe I've missed it. 1, 2, 3, 4, because now we're going into this sub, 5, and 6. So these will match the divisions in the back of the book, but of course they also have the individual anucheds contained in each of these divisions. So yeah, this is an overview, of the divisions that we've made. Now we're going to look into the specifics. Is this arbitrary? Have we just, sort of made up the divisions ourselves? Are these divisions really, the divisions intended by Jiva Goswami? So in looking into this, Jiva Goswami himself, maybe I'm going to write something down here. Do we have a...
Below the screen. Here, on this small table in front of your table.
Whereabouts? Okay. So, there are key words given by Jiva Goswami throughout the text. When he's beginning a new topic, in almost every case, he introduces it with the word atta. So basically, the indications of the topics that we have studied and specified, basically the word atta will be next, A will be described. Okay, where A is the topic, that he will mention himself. And when he's concluding a topic, he almost in every case, tadevam. In this way, A is concluded or has been described. Okay, in some cases, in concluding a topic, instead of using tadevam, he'll use tasmat. Consequently, okay, with his concluding statement, regarding the point. So, if we carefully examine the text and, look for these signposts, these are signposts, and, and then look at the statements that are attached to them, this gives us the thematic breakdown of the Sandarbhas. And it's my firm conviction that if Jiva Goswami were present today, he would do this work himself. Bearing in mind that these Sandarbhas were written 500 years ago, to a large extent they were written on palm leaves. It was already enough, to write it in this form. And it's such a long and complex text that, let's say it was either not convenient or not possible to, at the end, reorganize everything, to make it explicit, these thematic divisions. But they're all there. This is the point. They are all there already. And, now is the time. We got computers, we can analyze the text. This is a service to Jiva Goswami to make explicit what he has done. And to make it available, to make it so much easier for the devotee community to grasp. So I'll see how far we can get in this discussion. So, true to form, the whole thing begins atta. Atta purvam sandarbhatrayena yasya sarva paratram saditvam tasya Shri Bhagavato nirdarananaya sandarbho ayam arabhyate. This next, this Krishna Sandarbha is now being undertaken to determine the precise identity of Sri Bhagavan, whose supremacy over all other forms of the Godhead has been established in the three previous Sandarbhas. So the let's go on to No, there was another point I wanted to bring up here. So this whole first section is dealing with the Purusha avatars. You can see by the titles of the individual Anucheds. Bhagavan is the source of Paramatma. Pradyumna manifests Brahma. The Purusha's form is of pure Sattva. Identity of the forms of the first and second Purushas. The second Purush is the source of unlimited avatars. Over here, page 35. So, the next section begins in Anuched 6. Again, Atta is beginning a new section. Thereafter, while describing at length the avatars of the Purush, described in the previous section, Sri Sutta in the next 20 verses enumerates the appearances of the portions of the Purush and of the whole Amshi, who encompasses them with the intention of disclosing their oneness. So this now begins many chapters enumerating the various avatars of the Purush, beginning with the Kumars and so on and so forth. Now this continues up to the end of 27. 28 begins a new section, Krishna is Śrīmad-Bhāgavata. Now sometimes these concluding statements come at the end of the section in which they're found. Sometimes they come at the very beginning of the next one. So this is the case here. Tadevam. In this way, having ascertained the identity of Paramatma along with its parts, Sri Sutta now identifies Sri Bhagavan by his form. Okay, so this statement is simultaneously concluding the previous topic and introducing the new topic. Krishna is Śrīmad-Bhāgavata. So this discussion is in Anucheds 28 and 29. Then we start a new section called the Fourfold Army of the Bhagavat's Paribhasha. Again, he starts this new section by concluding the previous section, Tad Evam. Krishnastu Bhagavan Swayam. In this way, the formal declaration, Krishna, however, is Śrīmad-Bhāgavata, like a great heroic emperor, single-handedly overrules hundreds of opposing statements, assimilating them unto itself. Yet, just to augment the pleasure of the audience by a display of unique splendor, I will now cite other verses as well that are like the emperor's supporting fourfold army. Chaturangini Senam Iva. So, what are these four divisions? In fact, we have to, in a way, read further ahead even to determine what they are, because Jiva Goswami doesn't specify them here. But the first division are some supportive statements of the pratigya, Krishna's to Swayam Bhagavan. So he'll quote a whole series of statements that are very similar to this statement. So these are supportive. The first division of this fourfold army is the supportive statements of the pratigya, Krishna's to Bhagavan Swayam. In starting the second division, Krishna is the subject of the Bhagavat's major dialogues. In Anuched 44, he begins again, Tadevam. In this way, through an investigation into the topic of the avatars as well, it has been concluded that Sri Krishna alone is Swayam Bhagavan. Such being the case, Sri Krishna alone is indicated as the intended purport of the dialogues between the primary speakers and hearers throughout the Śrīmad-Bhāgavata. Here he's identifying the second division of the fourfold army. Second division is Krishna is the subject of the Bhagavat's major dialogues. Now, it's more than obvious when you start going through these Anucheds, he's quoting the major dialogues. I'm going to stop soon. I mean, I've done this for the whole book, but I think I've shown probably enough to give you the idea of what he's doing and how these divisions of topics are clearly indicated. So let's look at one more here. Again, tad evam. In this way, it has been established that the unanimous intent of both the chief hearers and speakers of the Bhagavat, this is clearly the conclusion of the previous topic, is Sri Krishna. Now the same conclusion will be validated by the 6 hermeneutical indicators of textual analysis, such as Shruti, Linga, and so on. This is the third and fourth divisions of the army. First Shat Brahman and then Shadling. So this whole first part is really establishing Krishna as Swayam Bhagavan. Once that is done, now let's look into the unique features of Swayam Bhagavan. And like most of these things are already discussed in a general way in Bhagavat Sandarbha, Bhagavan's form, Bhagavan's associates, Bhagavan's name, Bhagavan's Lila, in a general way, but now we're talking about Swayam Bhagavan. So the same things will be looked into as they pertain to Swayam Bhagavan. So the Mool Chaturvyuha of Swayam Bhagavan, Swayam Bhagavan's form, Swayam Bhagavan's abode, Swayam Bhagavan's associates, the Vrajavasis, the Yadavas and the Vrajavasis, Swayam Bhagavan's Lila, Prakat and Aprakat, and Swayam Bhagavan's Shaktis, the Mahishis and the Gopis. All these topics are clearly indicated in the same format, using these signposts, Ata and Tadevam. And I just wanted to conclude with a beautiful statement of Jiva Goswami. And just to remind you, this is now again tying into the universalism that we started this whole discussion with epistemology and analyzing the deeper significance of Vachya-Vachak Sambandha. That a study of this text could be done just as propositional knowledge. You know, to accumulate our body of knowledge about Bhagavan. Or it could be entered into from beginning to end in an experiential manner that prepares the groundwork, that in a sense is disclosing Bhagavan more and more intimately, and as Bhagavan is disclosed more and more intimately, the self is disclosed more and intimately, and the relation between them, which is preparing the ground for this entrance into Rasa. So those who dismiss the relevance of Jiva Goswami's Sandarbhas have missed the whole point. They, let's say from the very outset, have missed the epistemological view that is meant to inform this examination. So I'm going to conclude with Jiva Goswami's statement here. In this way, the investigation into the ontological truth regarding the Supreme Absolute, Sambandha Tattva, has been delineated in 4 Sandarbhas. Furthermore, within the scope of this ontological consideration, Sambandha, the ultimate limit of the truth to be disclosed, Sambandhi, is found exclusively in the manifestation of Sri, Radha and Madhava. This discussion is disclosing the truth of Radha and Madhava to us. It is specifically with this end in mind that this entire systematic deliberation has been extensively set forth. In this manner, the topic of Sambandha is now complete. So we can end there for today. Thank you for your attention, and if we still have time for any questions.
In the beginning you mentioned several prejudices which led to a kind of domination. And I would like to know, without mentioning the prejudices themselves, without giving the list, what were the sources of those prejudices? Why did previous thinkers or translators, where did they bring from?
What I meant by prejudices, to put it in the right perspective, that there were certain misunderstandings on certain points, understandings that were rooted in non-acquaintance with the complete presentation of the Sandarbhas. So let's say without a complete exposure to the Sandarbhas, it's inevitable that certain misconceptions could be there. Now, in the beginning, these were simple, understandable misgivings due to non-formal exposure, non-formal transmission of the teachings in their complete form, when subsequently these misgivings were then propagated as the truths, without reference to the to an exposure, because we have to understand that apparently it is only in the Gaura Gadadhar line that the transmission of the Sandarbhas was preserved. I mean to say, preserved, transmitted from teacher to student with the context of the Saddarshan, which is necessary to understand it. In other lines, this was either not emphasized or let's say, not preserved. And prior to the publication of the Sandarbhas, which was first done by Prangopal, the only way that one could learn the Sandarbhas is to learn it from a teacher. Now, if it so happened that, you know, you're coming in a Gaudiya line in which the Sandarbhas are not being transmitted in this way, it would be virtually impossible. Certain things, you know, let's say, you know, Bhakti Sandarbha would have been more, let's say, being very closely related to Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, might have been more available. So this is the problem is rooted in the non-availability of the Sandarbhas, which could give rise to certain unclarity or mistakes about certain aspects of the philosophy, which then became certified as the philosophy, and these became prejudices. Prejudice in the sense of we prioritize these views as being, you know, our views. And later, much later, first of all, we can see how poorly the Sandarbhas are being translated in our Sampradaya. This is another major problem. But when now we're at a stage where, you know, they're starting to come out, these prejudices are so entrenched in relations of domination that even, you know, it's almost impossible for people to even examine the Sandarbhas in an objective light. They try to take statements and twist them to support the prejudices. You know, so this is the crisis that we are facing now.
We have a question from Aindra.
Mm-hmm.
Radhe Radhe.
Radhe Radhe, Indra.
Thank you, Navadvipa, for your class. Question about the preparation of translators. So, as soon as translation from English version of Sandarbha to some other language is started, what would you suggest to the translator from English to another language as preparation? What are the necessary requirements to have for them to go on with this work at the level which is really required?
I mean, first and foremost, it requires to receive the teachings of the Sandarbhas in parampara, you know, so that you're approaching the work with a clear understanding of the philosophy. And the other side is, and this has been more, let's say, my contribution, you know, in this work, is the preparation done to to render it into the target language. So in this case, you're translating from English to Russian. So a preparation is required to be, let's say, in tune with philosophical language in Russian. You have to have a good acquaintance with good writing, good philosophical writing in Russian, good writing on topics like transpersonal psychology, as it may be discussed, in the Russian language. In order to have the standard of language required to bring it out, in order to carry the depth, subtlety, and complexity with which Jiva Goswami himself is writing in Sanskrit. But this is a continuous process. Like in my own case, after many years of studying strictly Indian philosophies, 25 years ago, or actually a little bit more than that now, but I began the preparation of studying a whole array of modern systems of knowledge, and it's still going on even now. That's why there's a constant refinement in the language. I mean, even from within this series, you'll find a refinement in the language. When finally this Priti Sandarbha is published, which is the last volume in the series, there's already another standard of language in order to be able to adequately render what Jiva Goswami is presenting. So of course one cannot have that qualification all at once, but a certain basic preparation should be there. And if one is planning to make a career of translation, then one should be prepared to undergo this kind of constant study and dedication and refinement of skill and knowledge. Because it's not just a matter of, I've been involved in translation for 32 years. Yeah, but you could be involved in translation for 30 years or 50 years and always remain at a beginner's level if the preparation is not being done. So I see that, because it's become a fashion, many people are taking it up without the preparation and that don't undergo this kind of rigorous training, to be able to do the work at the required standard.
We have another question from Dhira Lalita.
Thank you.
We have another.
Radhe,
Why there is no sound?
Radhe, can you hear me?
Yes, Radhe.
Just a few parts to what I have to say. Firstly, it's a great appreciation of what you guys have done. One of the questions I want to ask is, you said the initial translation from Sanskrit to Bengali was Pran Gopal. Can you give like a year or a little bit about Pran Gopal with Sampradaya in there? And then you also mentioned that there are English translations that are coming. Are they coming from his translation from Bengali to English, or are they just random translations coming?
Unfortunately, I don't know much about the background of Pran Gopal, other than he was a highly respected Gaudiya Vaishnav of his time, from around late 1800s. We have consulted his translation, although, of course, we are working from Sanskrit, but we have consulted his translation, and it's an excellent translation in Bengali. He also has a Vivriti commentary to explain many subtle points. And in footnotes, we have referred in many places to these comments of Prangopal. We've also consulted the 9-volume encyclopedia of Gaudiya Vaishnavism of Radha Govindanath, who was a younger contemporary of Bhaktisiddhanta. He studied with a Gaudiya Vaishnava here in Vrindavan. His disciplical line is also very hard to find out. I think he was quite discreet about it. I've tried to find it out and haven't been able to. But of course, he's not giving a outright translation of Priti Sandarbha, but this 9-volume encyclopedia is laid out very, very systematically, and it's all based on the Goswami books. So as it turns out, there's significant portions of Priti Sandarbha that are translated, that we've consulted, and also cited here and there, wherever they've brought clarity to the text. The English translations that are being done, I can't really say if they're done exclusively from the Sanskrit or if they've consulted the other editions. But as we've seen this in this one, as far as I know, there are 2 English translations of the Sandarbhas, and both of them suffer from the same kind of mistakes throughout the text. So whether they're done from Sanskrit or Bengali hardly matters, because they are so poorly done and with so many mistakes that it's clear the translators don't really know what they're talking about. And unfortunately, these translations are being read and are highly misleading. On the other hand, I would invite anyone who is truly interested in knowing the Sandarbhas, in studying the Sandarbhas, to look into the editions that we have published, and any objective look. Of course, the Devanagari text itself is there. So if you can read Sanskrit, and it's also broken up into small bits, so it's easy enough, to follow text and translation. We've inserted the Sanskrit terms throughout the text, so even those that can't read Sanskrit can refer to the actual words used by Jiva Goswami. It's replete with a very elaborate commentary of Satyanarayan, footnotes to clarify terms. We've consulted, like whether, let's say, Upanishads are being cited, Purans, the different darshans. Everything has been referenced in as detailed manner as possible to substantiate exactly how the translation has been done. Anyone who is not already prejudiced by this historical transmission involved in politics of domination can readily see that this translation, it stands on its own authority.
May I give a little bit of feedback?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so I'm based in South Africa. There's quite a few disciples of Babaji here.
Please, yeah.
And so we've embarked on teaching Dr. Sandarbhas from the Jiva edition. What we are finding is that although people have been affiliated with the Krishna conscious movement or the Gaudiya Sampradayas for the last 30 years, when they come in contact with these books that are written more for not necessarily scholars, but more for trying to preserve the authentic meanings, they find it very terse to go through. It's almost like having to retrain them in terms of reading, because all the books they have been exposed to have always been like storylines or just like, no philosophical depth and substantiation in it. So I'm finding that a lot of people buy these books, but they are still struggling to read it. And I'm talking of people who have read, unlike other devotees who haven't been reading, people who have been reading the publications of the Gaudiya Maths and the ISKCONs and the like.
Yeah, it is an issue. I hear what you're saying. I'm not saying that the Sandarbhas that we have presented are by any means an easy read, but that is not simply in the manner in how we have presented them. Rather, it is the very nature of the Sandarbhas themselves. They are highly complex, highly intricate philosophical works in Sanskrit. Although they're difficult to read even in English, in let's say the translations that have been done are by no means easy, but compared to reading them in Sanskrit, believe me, so much work has been done to make these works accessible. And my point in the first class that I gave in the universalism in Jiva Goswami, and which I have referred to again in this class, that although it's no doubt it would be a very long enterprise to study all 6 Sandarbhas, but wherever you study, if you take up the reading and the study in the spirit, the epistemological spirit that I outlined in the very beginning, that you're entering into a relationship with the text, a relationship that is self-disclosive. So even if you just read a little bit every day in that spirit, one paragraph entered into in the spirit of relationship can be so moving and can impact you in such a deep way, that it changes the whole nature of the study. So, this is what we are inviting devotees to take up the study, the investigation in this spirit, and take it as far as you're able to. Those, of course, who are let's say, who have studied to a point where they're able to teach others, then these books can be the source for teaching. Because in a sense, when I read Jiva Goswami in Sanskrit, I'm thinking, the way this is written, this is not written for the general devotee. Of course it's not, because you can't even read it unless you know Sanskrit. But I mean to say, the standard that he expects is so high that he must have written it for those that he would expect to become teachers. Because you're required to know so many things and to have such a vast background that it's almost like it's a preparation guide, for teachers in our Sampradaya. As is being done by Satyanarayan Baba. And there are those that are studying in a very serious manner under him, and they're undergoing a preparation which in course of time will allow them to also take up the role of teaching. So, and in the spirit of teaching, let's say we're making available through summary and so on, through explanation, making available what is difficult on your own, for the average reader to take up. And, yes, it's a daunting task in a way, but the language is such that it is really doing justice, to what Jiva Goswami has left for us.
Shailesh Krishna ji.
Pranams, Navadvipa Dasa. I have a short question. Sandarbha project is coming to an end, basically. I was curious, how do you feel about it? And is there any further work planned towards that direction?
Yeah, absolutely. How I feel about it, this has been more than a 20-year journey of daily working with not only the text that Jiva Goswami has left, but I think that anyone that is doing deep translation work cannot help but enter into a direct relation with the author, on a daily basis. That there's a feeling that there is a direct communication that is opened up with Jiva Goswami that is guiding this whole unfolding of the Sandarbhas, and it's coming to completion now, and it is in a certain way an overwhelming feeling of joy to see the whole picture. Like even the journey through each Sandarbha, or even through a series of anucheds that are discussing a particular topic, like following the discussion, and when a complete picture, even of a segment, comes into view, it's like maybe the feeling, you've been working on a highly complex puzzle, and it's suddenly completed, and the whole picture is there, and it's like, that's just to give a mundane example. So you can imagine with this whole journey of the Sandarbhas, but certainly, as I mentioned in an earlier class, and I've been having discussions with Satyanarayan Baba, that it is very much our intention to come out with a one volume. This also relates to an earlier question, to make it in a way more accessible, to come out with a one volume summary of all the Sandarbhas that can make it much more accessible, for the average devotee, and to bring it out in a spirit, in the spirit, that we've been discussing in these classes. So this is among the many almost limitless translation projects that Satyanarayan has in mind, this is certainly, primary.
Thank you very much.
I was having a question. You mentioned that Pran-Gopal made a commentary. Is the whole commentary included? His
No.
whole, not only excerpts?
Yeah, I mean, wherever it was felt that the comment illuminated a point that was, particularly complex or almost too subtle to grasp, because Jiva Goswami in many places is very, very brief in his explanation. So, he has been, his commentary has been referred to in many places, but in places where it's already been, let's say, elaborated by Babaji in his commentary, was not necessary to do a full translation of Pran-Gopal's commentary.
And I was having also a second, you mentioned these two kinds of approach to holy literature, like propositional, and then this meditational.
Experiential.
Yeah, experiential. Do you think to approach a text experientially, one has to be on the path, or one can be also a new devotee on this bhakti path, and one can still, or do you recommend in a first step to acquire knowledge? As in the
if it so happens that a person comes in contact with this literature, and let's say, how would they get the idea to approach the text experientially without without meeting a devotee who's even making this kind of view available? There would have to be some contact, but let's say if they come in contact, prior to taking diksha, formal diksha, and so on, but there is some guidance there, and some faith in the guidance that is being received. Then let's say they can begin, from the very outset, to take this approach, to take an experiential approach. And of course, it will be very much enhanced, by embracing that guidance more fully, which obviously, can lead to formal diksha and so on. Let's say it can lead to more and more enhanced guidance and more enhanced entry into this kind of reading. So I'm going to take one last question from
Haribol.
Haribol.
I would like to express my gratitude to you, Navadvipa ji, the whole team who's working in the background, the financial supporters, of course, Babaji Maharaj, and all the team at Jiva Institute to give us this amazing work of Jiva Goswami, not only in book form, but also the opportunity to study here at Jiva Institute this amazing work. So thank you very much.
Thank you for your appreciation. So, thank you for your time and attention. Jai Shri Radhe Shyam.